Yeah.
All right, welcome to part 6 of this environmental stewardship program. It's a pilot program that we're hoping that will not be the last, but will be a first step in a long journey towards transforming our civilization towards the clean, renewable energy civilization and away from the old fossil fuel civilization. And so it's a long journey ahead, but this is the first step or one of the many first steps. And I would like to welcome everyone that's joined us this afternoon. And I would like to thank all of you also that's been here with us since part 1. And we have one of our environmental stewards, Richard, in person.
Yeah.
And then
Finally.
we have our garden now outside, and we have pollinators now. What used to be a small patch of dirt in the parking lot has been transformed into the urban wildlife habitat. And there's a bunch of bees now over there. So this is gonna be, kind of a demonstration garden to illustrate the concepts that we're trying to share, a microcosm of society and how we can transform dirt into soil, into healthy soil, and help us figure out how we're going to solve the challenges that we face today. And we have our special guest today, Taylor Nichols. He is a famous Hollywood actor.
Which is better than infamous.
And also a sustainability advocate and part of the West Los Angeles Neighborhood Council, advocating for sustainability and alternative transportation to give us more choices than the fossil fuel automobiles that a lot of us are used to. So with that, I am giving the floor to Taylor so he can introduce himself and start his presentation on what we can do to act now. And that is the whole point of this whole program, of this whole series, is for us to do something, big or small, that all of us can make an impact, that we're all stakeholders in this sustainability journey. So Taylor, take the floor. And after that, we'll open the floor to question and answers.
Great. Thank you, James. Thanks for setting this program up, and thank you for inviting me. Thanks to everyone at the EPHFTES, which is the Echo Park Historic Filipino Town Environmental Stewardship Program. I've been following what you all have been doing through the first couple of sessions, vision and biodiversity and climate and infrastructure and energy and food and water. And now it's time for us. It's time for us to step up to the plate and take action on what we've learned. And as your website says, knowledge is power. And so that's what we're gonna try to put some of our knowledge to use into power today. The little topic that James gave me was taking action, and I thought, what does taking action even mean? And why am I the one that James asked to talk about it? Because lots of times I literally stand in the middle of the room, not knowing what to do. I don't know which errand to run or what to do or where to go or what to do. And I literally am frozen as I try to figure out what to do. So I took a step back and I looked up the definition of taking action or of action. And it's really great. It's couldn't be simpler. It just says the fact or process of doing something. I love that. I mean, it could be anything, except it's not. It's something. It's doing something, and it's specific that way. I'm an actor, and I teach an acting class. And we often talk a lot about what's the difference in action and motion for an actor in a movie or on stage. Well, motion is just moving around, not really with any specific purpose. So John Wooden, the famed UCLA basketball coach, said, "Don't mistake activity for achievement." And I think that's really great. And that's what we talk about in acting class, is action has a purpose. Is this kind of loud and bugging you? Should I turn the volume down?
Yeah.
Yours.
You're good.
Okay. Well, there's an echo here, so I didn't know. It's better now, actually. Can you guys still hear?
Yeah.
Okay. So in acting class, we talk all the time about action versus motion. When an actor on stage or on a movie set is just moving around for no purpose, it actually dissipates the energy that the scene has, and nothing gets accomplished. But when the actor has an action that is motivated by getting what he or she wants in that scene, I want to get James to pay attention to me. I don't just do motion. I look at him and say, "Look at me," or I take his headphones off, but I create an action. And that's what we get to do now, is we get to step up and create action. So going back to what action is and what is taking action, for me, it's getting involved. I got involved in the neighborhood council. I got involved in the Los Angeles Bicycle Advisory Committee. I got involved in a lot of things like that. But so getting involved, okay, that's great. How? Where? When? Why? With who? About what? Well, all of that is up to you. So taking action is getting involved with whatever you think is important to you, your family, or your community. Thank you very much. My speech is done, right? I'm all done. It's all over with. Except that in my mind, all these different things that might be on your list to get involved in, AKA everything or anything: housing, transportation, the climate, mobility, justice, work equality, work equity, personal health and safety, everything and anything. So it doesn't matter what you get involved in, you just have to get involved. I know I'm preaching to the choir here today, and so I will try not to preach, but it starts with just getting out and about, walking around in your neighborhood. Jane Jacobs, the famous community activist who fought Robert Moses in New York City, used to call it eyes on the street. Well, that's what makes our community safe, is eyes on the street. It's not always just police presence or something like that. It's us being out, you knowing that it's your neighbor's kids that are playing on the sidewalk. That's what makes our neighborhood safe. So get involved in your neighborhood. Neighborhood council, volunteer anywhere, at a shelter, a food bank, a school, a senior center, a council district office, a local library, the HFTES. I love that acronym. I'm not sure how to say it. EFIDIS. And certainly most of all, vote. But to talk about getting involved and whatever you want to get involved in, for me, it all comes back to one thing. It all leads back to the great equalizer, the work multiplier, the most efficient form of personal transportation ever invented. Its passenger is its engine. The most noble invention of mankind,
Bicycle.
the humble bicycle, right? Thank you very much. I'm so glad you said that. Desmond Tutu, the famous human rights advocate, Nobel Peace Prize winner, said, he had many famous quotes in his life. I'm sure you've heard this one before. Give a man a fish and he eats for a day. Teach a man to fish and he eats for a lifetime. Teach a man to cycle and he realizes that fishing is stupid and boring. That was Desmond Tutu, it wasn't me. And you know, JFK, John F. Kennedy, said, nothing compares to the simple pleasure of riding a bike. And I can attest to that as I rode here today. A healthy society is one that values a person on a $60 bicycle as much as they value a person in a $60,000 car. So today we're going to discuss riding a bike safely in the car capital of the world. Because right now, Los Angeles does not value vulnerable road users the same as they value people in cars. And notice I said in cars, not people outside of cars, not people around cars, not people near cars. We as a society do not value them much at all. I mean, my God, hit and run crashes are at epidemic levels. So we need to take a step forward to change that. So the best way to take action on whatever action you wish to take is to get there by bicycle. No reason to spend a gallon of gas to buy a gallon of milk. So if congestion is an issue in your neighborhood, if parking is difficult where you live, work, or shop, if your commute is keeping you from having time to exercise, not to mention if pollution's an issue, both noise and air, then the bicycle was built for you. Bicycling is going to be a big part of the future. It has to be. There's something wrong with a society that drives a car to work out at the gym. That's from Bill Nye, the science guy. I like that one. Why bike? It's convenient. It saves money. It's enjoyable and healthy, and it's green. It mixes with transit. It goes on a bus, in the subway, or on a train. I even put my bike in an Uber once. And now we have bike share. With bike share, you don't have to worry about locking your bike up or fixing your bike or having it stolen or where you store it. You just go to the nearest bicycle kiosk, take out a bike, ride to the neighborhood garden at the EPHFTES program. Did I get it right? And do your work at the garden. Leave the bike. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to bring it inside the conference room. So those who wish to control their own lives and move beyond the existence as mere clients and consumers, those are people that ride bikes. That was Wolfgang Sachs, a German academic. And think of the bicycle as rideable art that can just about save the world. That's Grant Peterson. None of these are mine. So he's a German designer. So let me go to the first slideshow. Is that all right?
Yeah. Share your presentation.
Might have to go to Zoom and then share. I think it's right there. Oh. Okay. And then I have to go to Zoom. Oh, sorry. Oh, share screen. Thank you very much. There we go. Thank you, James. There you go.
Now you can launch it.
Yeah. Okay, taking action. I love this quote. Every time I see an adult on a bicycle, I no longer fear for the future of the human race. That's H.G. Wells. Wow. Smart people ride bikes. Republicans ride bikes. Democrats ride bikes. This is Jimmy Carter. Maybe some of you all know who he is, but maybe some of you don't. I looked for a picture of Obama riding a bike and I couldn't find one. I was very disappointed by that. But Democrats also ride bikes. Single people ride bikes, sometimes with no hands. Married people ride bikes. This is a good friend of mine, Josh, and his wife, his new bride, Carrie. I actually had the honor to ride the bike from the church to the reception. And I rode it by myself with all these just married placards on the cargo bay. And I got so much attention from drivers wondering where my bride was. So women ride bikes. Now, I don't know if you can read the quote at the bottom there, but it says that the bicycle has done more to emancipate women than anything else in the world. Susan B. Anthony. And then, of course, I love the one by Margaret Mead that everyone knows, I'm sure, that, never doubt that a small, thoughtful, committed group of individuals can change the world. In fact, we are the only thing that ever has. And the fact that you're here today, either in person or online, attests to that. This is also a great quote, I think, along the lines of that women ride bikes. Bicycles are almost as good as guitars for meeting girls. Bob Weir of the Grateful Dead. Families ride bikes. Commuters ride bikes. Have you ever seen this guy on Hollywood Boulevard, Silverman? He's riding to work. Some bikes are fit for two, some bikes fit two, even though they are built for just one. Old people ride bikes, and some old people ride old bikes. Young people ride bikes. She's learning independence. She's learning power. Unhoused people ride bikes. This is a friend of mine, a guy named Jeff, who spends most of his time up in the Hollywood Hills, or you'll see him out by the beach out just north of Santa Monica. And he's very dapper. I love his sunglasses and his beard. He always wears a suit or something. And he takes his bike everywhere. Unhoused people ride bikes. In fact, sometimes they depend on them. That's what can get them to their services or possibly a job. And of course, kings ride bikes. Biking's beautiful and fast. And kind of sexy too, I think. That's an advertisement for a bike back in 1910. Back in the day. So you too can ride a bike. Now, what does Mark Twain? Get a bicycle. You will certainly not regret it if you live. So we can all use a little help or a push now and then to get started on a new endeavor, like bicycling. This is how we protect people who ride bikes in Los Angeles, with a strip of paint. Nothing. This is how we protect shopping carts, with plastic bollards. More than a strip of paint. We care more about shopping carts than we do about people. That's crazy. This is how other cities start to do it. This is not a protected bike lane, but this is a buffered bike lane, giving you a little bit more space on the road. But also what it does is it actually calms the car traffic. The car traffic no longer has that third lane to go into to speed to pass somebody. So the two lanes of traffic handle just as much traffic at a smoother, more controlled speed. And of course, this is a protected bike lane. This is in Barcelona. So you can see it has little bollards here at the bottom. So emergency vehicles can still access that area if they need, but drivers won't. And this is a completely separated bike path. Yeah. This is the next level. That's beautiful. It's beautiful. You would let your child ride on this. You would let your parent ride on this. You would be comfortable riding on this. This is the next step. This is also in Barcelona. This is a street where they have made cars guests on the street. The car can still be there, but they don't really cut through. It's made for people, for shoppers, for families, for children, for older people. Bike parking. Wouldn't that be great? Look how many bicycles are there, and think if those were cars. How much surface space would that be taken up in downtown Los Angeles or in historic Filipino town? We don't need either. Parking raises the price of rental apartments by $35,000 a stall. That's crazy. So, poor decisions by our civic leaders does not mean that we cannot ride safely on our streets. And I say our streets. So let's learn how to start riding safely as a way of life, as if your life depended on it, because it just might. Bicycling 101. I'm going to change now to my other one. Is that all right? Mm-hmm. So I'll go through this fairly quickly, but because I want to get to questions if anyone has questions or topics to talk about. But I want to get started with talking about how someone might start riding a bike for the first time. So we're going to talk about the bicycle, a little bit about bicycle maintenance, a little bit about what to wear when you ride a bike, and a little bit about the skills of riding a bike. They always say that you never forget how to ride a bike. I hope not. How much should I spend on a bike? Where will I be riding and what will I use my bike for? Does anybody here have a bike? You do? What do you use it for?
Mostly leisurely activities with my family.
Yeah, just going out for a ride with your family. Right. Do you ever ride to the store or anything like that?
I used to back in middle school and high school.
Great. So we want to think first about what we want to use our bike for. If you're just riding with your family, you might want a little bit more high-powered bike, something a little faster or a lighter or something like that. If you want to go to the store, you might go for a bike more like mine that has a rack on the back. I can put a pack on there. I can put $120 of groceries on that bike. And I don't have to worry about parking at Trader Joe's. So it's really great. Where will I be riding? In the city? In the mountains? You gotta ask yourself those questions first, and then you pick a bike appropriately. Road, mountain, hybrid, comfort. Electric bikes are game changers. There's I didn't realize this, but there's a fair amount of hills on Temple as I'm coming east here, and I was running a little bit late, so I was pushing it, and I was like, oh man, these hills are killing me. And it went from 27 to 26.5 to 26.4 to 26, the addresses. So it would have been nice to have had an electric bike. Fitting for the bicycle. You want to straddle the top bar of the bike and make sure that you can get your leg over it comfortably. You want to lift the front wheel off the ground and make sure that you still have room there. There should be about 1 inch or 2 space between the top bar and your crotch. And it's also really great now to get what's called a step-through bike. When I was a child, we called it girls' bikes, but that's not really the case anymore. It's a step-through bike, which means you don't have to swing your leg over to get on the bike. And this is just the bike and the different parts: the wheels, the handlebars, the seat, the cranks, the chain, the gears. We won't go into all of that. But bikes haven't changed much since about 1890. The picture of the older man on the penny farthing, the big front wheel and the small front wheel, was how bikes first started. Then they went to what's called a safety bike, and that's pretty much what we have now. You're gonna lift them in. Yeah. Next thing is the saddle height. People often want to sit on the saddle of the bike and be able to touch the ground. That's not really necessary. What's important is that with one leg on your pedal and sitting on the seat, you can lean the bike over and touch the ground. Or on a step-through frame, you can come off the seat and be in the middle of the frame. But the most important thing is, on whatever bike you get, is comfort. Are you comfortable getting on it? Are you comfortable getting off of it? Are you comfortable stopping and starting? And then, are you comfortable riding? Is it just comfortable to be on? The handlebars are typically shoulder width apart, and adjusted so that your arms are slightly bent. And again, make sure that it's comfortable. You want to perform a basic bike check whenever you get on a bike, and that's called ABC Quick Check. And A is for air. Is there air in the tires? B is for brakes. Do the brakes work? Some bikes have hand brakes. Some bikes have what's called a coaster brake or a foot brake. C is for the cranks and the chain. Is the chain rusted? Is it moving? Are the cranks tight? Are the cassettes tight? And it just takes a second. You don't have to ride the bike. All you have to do is look at it and see if the chain is properly on the gears and not loose. And then the last thing is quick check. And some bikes now have what's called a quick release on the wheel so that they can take the wheel off really easily. That's great so you can lock the bike up. That's also great so that you can put it in your car or in an Uber if you need. And there's a little, I'll show you later if anyone has a question, but there's a little quick release handle on the wheel. Then what to wear when you ride. And I love this, everyday clothes. What I wore today is what I rode. I mean, what I'm wearing now is what I rode here in. I used to go to the Mark Taper Forum, the theater downtown, which actually is now pausing its season. But I would go down, I'd wear a tie, I'd wear a sport coat sometimes. And so there's no reason that you feel that you have to wear special clothing to ride a bike. You just want to make sure that your right leg, where the chain is either rolled up or constrained, so the chain doesn't get your pant leg dirty or get caught in the chain. And when you're riding in inclement weather, you just want to wear layers. I often ride to the valley. I'll start off leaving my home in West Hollywood with a sweater or a jacket. By the time I'm going up the Cahuenga Pass over into the valley, I'm hot. So I take off that layer and I'm just fine. Lock your bike. I didn't even bring a lock today. So I seldom lock my bike because I bring it with me. I always bring it into a store if I'm going to buy something really quickly. If I'm going to stop and get a coffee, I will bring it right into the coffee shop or put it on the patio of the coffee shop. But if you do have to leave your bike, you got to lock it. Otherwise, it's going to be somebody else's bike. The next thing to think about is a carrying system on your bike. You know, I would recommend you looking at that again, is because I have a rack on my bike and I could take a bag on and off in seconds and go to the store or put my computer or presentation or whatever in that bag. But you have to have a carrying system, and that's the rack. And the last thing is lights. And again, I'll show you my bike if anyone's curious, but the lights are really simple. Lots of times we give them away, but they're very important because you want to be seen. And we'll talk about that as we move on. This just shows you how to lock up your bike. You want to make sure you lock one wheel and the frame to a post. You can even use, I don't know if you can see that little red part, that's a cable that's locking the back wheel. I seldom do that, but if you're going to leave your bike in an area that is maybe less than desirable, you might want to lock your rear wheel also. A helmet. I wore a helmet today. I think a helmet's a great idea. People often talk about in the Netherlands that a lot of cyclists or a lot of people who ride bikes don't wear helmets. But what they don't say is that when people do fall in the Netherlands, they hit their head. So they maybe don't fall very much because they ride a lot or the roads are very safe for cyclists. But when they do fall, they often hit their heads. So a helmet is not a bad idea. Follow the laws. One of the things that we'll talk about a little bit is when you're riding your bike, you need to follow the same laws that cars follow. Right of way, when you come to an intersection. Bikes don't have to stop at the intersection, but they have to give the right of way. You don't have to come to a complete stop unless there are other cars there, then you do. But if there's no other cars there, you can slow down, make sure that you have the right of way and go on. That's called the Idaho stop law. It's actually not in law yet in California. So in California, you actually do, by the letter of the law, have to stop. But you don't have to put your foot down. You just have to stop your forward momentum before you go on. We're trying to change that so you don't even have to come to a complete stop. You just have to follow the right of way. But otherwise, you have the same duties and responsibility as a motorist. But one of the great things about riding a bike is if the road gets unsafe, you can become a pedestrian just by getting off your bike and walking on the sidewalk. One of the things you want to do when you ride a bike is make your intentions clear to everybody else on the road. You want to make sure that they see you. So sometimes riding on the sidewalk is not safe because cars don't see you. You leave the sidewalk, you go into the intersection, the car is not expecting you. It's actually safer to ride in the street. Now, obviously, that depends on the street. Temple cars move pretty fast, so you might not be comfortable riding on Temple. You might want to go a block south or a block north and ride on the neighborhood street where you can take the whole lane. And then you want to signal what you want to do. There's all different kinds of signals. I just point. If I'm going to go left, I point left. If I'm going to go right, I point right. But you want to make sure people know what you are going to do. Ride where people can see you. Wear bright clothing. Use a light at nighttime. When you come to an intersection, make eye contact. Typically, you shouldn't ride on sidewalks, but I do it all the time. If I'm not safe on the street, I ride on the sidewalk. And that's what one of the good things about bikes is you have that choice. So if you ever get into a situation where you're not comfortable, you can ride on the sidewalk. You want to anticipate what someone's going to do. If you're riding in one direction and there's a car coming at you and he or she has his blinker on, they're going to turn left in front of you. So you need to be aware what other people are doing also. And if you have the right of way, you can go ahead and go, but you got to watch that person to make sure that they see you, because if they see you, they won't go. But if they don't see you, that's what's scary. Watch for turning vehicles, watch for the door zone. You don't want to ride too close to parked cars because they will open the door. You want to take your space in the lane. Legally, you have the right to the whole lane. So you can take it. And you should take it. Cars respect you more when you do take it. Look out for debris. That's always a big thing. Glass, potholes, trash, anything in the street, you want to be careful of that. Careful about crossing cracks in the road, or in this case, it says here, railroad tracks, because if your tire hits that, you can get caught. You want to hit those at a right angle. You want to take your tire across a crack or a railroad track at a right angle. We already talked about this. Before you ride, do your quick ABC quick check. Make sure there's air in the tires. The bicycle is working properly. I don't always take tools with me, but if you're going to go on a long ride, you might want to bring something to fix a flat. We won't go into any of that today. But so if you're new to riding and you haven't ridden a bike in a while, practice. Go to a parking lot, an empty parking lot, and practice getting on and getting off your bike, starting and stopping. Practice going in a straight line. Practice looking around while you're on your bike. Can you see behind you? Can you see in front of you? Practice shifting, changing the gears, scanning, and then practice riding with one hand so you can signal with the other hand. Gears, which not all bikes have, really just make the pedaling effort the same, whether you're going up a hill or downhill, so you don't break out into a huge sweat. This just shows you how the chain runs. In the cassette in the back, the smaller gears are harder to pedal, and the bigger gears are easier to pedal. In the chain ring in the front, the smaller gear is easier to pedal, the bigger gear is harder to pedal, and that just takes a little bit of practice and time. But you do want to understand how the bike works. Working is, when it's getting harder to pedal, you want to shift to a lower gear. When it's getting easier to pedal, you want to shift to a higher gear. And again, that just takes practice. We'll move on through these. You don't want to twist your chain too much. You don't want to be on the inside in the front and the outside in the back, because you can see how it twists the chain. You want to be looking around. This is a great picture because you want to be aware of any car behind you, any car coming up over your left shoulder, any car coming up toward you that might turn across your path, where you're going directly in front of you, and also what's on your right. And when you're scanning, and you can see where this person is positioned in the lane, they're in a great spot. Cars see them and will respect them and give them a little bit of space. And you can see them. These are the signals. Again, I just point to where I want to go, but these are the different signals that tell the people around you what you're doing and where you're going to go. Review and questions, principles of traffic laws. We'll go through this quickly. Where should you ride? Should you take the lane or should you be over to the side? It's better almost always if you take the lane. Now, sometimes the lane is really wide and there is space for you to ride on the side. But if not, take the lane. Cars will see you, respect you, and go around. Lane positioning and speed control is very important. So take your space. A person on the bike has the same basic rights as a person in a car on the road. You're entitled to the space, and often it is the safest place to be, in the middle of a lane. Slow-moving vehicles should position themselves to the right, and you can do that too if the lane is big enough. Scan, signal your intention, scan again. Then if you have to yield to some traffic, and then move slowly into the next lane if you want to turn left. So you're constantly looking, you're telling people what you're going to do. You look again. If you have to wait for a car to pass you, because it's there, just like you would in a car. If I'm in the right-hand lane in the car, and a car and I need to get into the left lane, but a car is coming up on my left side, I would wait for him or her to pass. Then I would transition into the next lane. You can see where the bike is, where the rider is positioned here. If they're going right, they're on the right side of the lane. If they're going straight, they're in the middle of the lane. And if they're going left, they're on the left side of the lane. Take your position. Be in the rightmost lane that serves your destination. That means that you're taking the slow lane, right? If this rider was going to turn right, he would stay in the lane that he's in, he or she is in. If they want to go straight, you see that he or she has to move over 2 lanes to get into that lane. Now, seldom are you going to be riding on a road like this. But this is how you would maneuver on a road if you got caught like this. Or you might just get off your bike and get on the sidewalk. Take the lane. Don't squeeze, don't let cars squeeze by you on the left. Here you can see how the cyclist is positioned. He or she's gonna turn right. He's on the right-hand side. He or she's gonna go straight. They're on the left-hand side of the lane. Going straight through. This is a tricky one, a double left turn lane. So you would get in the right lane, the rightmost lane of the direction that you want to go in. Or if it's a one-way street and you want to turn left, you get in the left lane, or you stay in the right lane if you want to go straight. Again, now this is a pretty tricky situation. You're probably not going to be in this kind of situation, but again, this is how you might handle it. If you found yourself, you're scanning, you're letting know people, you're letting know the drivers that you're there. You are giving them the right of way if they're faster, and then you move to the rightmost lane of the direction that you want to go. Again, scanning. This is a protected bike lane. This is a two-way bike lane. This is a really great way to do it. It's protected by the parking also. So you have a two-way bike lane here, a row of cars, and then to the right of the cars is the moving traffic. This is called a bike box. You're probably starting to see some of these around Los Angeles. When you bike, you can go up to the front of the line of the cars and get into the bike box where everybody can see you. That's what it's there for. And now you can go with the pedestrian light. I don't know if you've noticed, lots of stoplights have a pedestrian light first, so you can actually get going and get across that intersection. We don't need to talk about that. Hazards in bicycling. You want to be careful about riding on the sidewalk. You want to be careful about riding the wrong way. You got to follow the street signs. You want to make sure that you can control the bike, that you obey the laws of the road, that your positioning is correct. I know I'm going through this pretty fast, but I just wanted to cover it quickly. And that you avoid the mistakes that you might make and that others might make. If they don't put on their left turn lane, their left turn signal, they still might turn left. It's your job to be careful of that. And then passive safety, which means wearing a helmet at nighttime, using your lights. I wear a vest at night so the lights can see me. You want to be careful of the surface of the street, cracks in the pavement, people opening their car doors, and you want to be visible at all times of day and at all weathers. And that's it. Do I have to turn this off, James?
Yeah, just stop sharing.
Oh, right there.
You
Stop
got share.
Yeah. There you go. Okay. So there's a ton of organizations in your community, in our community, whether it be Bike LA, which is the former Los Angeles County Bicycle Coalition, or whether it be the Bicycle Kitchen, which is a great place to go and get a bike or fix a bike. Of course, there's Bike Talk, which is on the radio at KPFK and online at biketalk.org. But let me leave you with this before we stop. Life is better for everyone when more people ride bikes. That's a fact. And work to eat to live, live to ride, ride to work. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation, Taylor. So now let's open up to questions, and Jim raised his hand. Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I want to echo everything you just said about bicycles and add one thing, and that most of the streets in Los Angeles are empty.
Right.
When you ride your bicycle on streets you don't know the names of, you'll find that you have to avoid the cats and dogs in the road, and the cars are very light. Los Angeles is a fabulous place to ride bicycles. Most of it's flat, and
Yeah.
mostly the weather is great. So that's just what you just, the streets
you're
are empty
totally
in
right.
the streets are empty in Los Angeles if you ride on the streets that you don't know the names of.
Right, which means staying off of Beverly or Melrose, or, one thing that brings up a great point, Jim, about picking your route. I did not pick my route great today because I ended up riding on Temple the last mile or two to get here. And that's a busy street, but I took the lane. The rest of it, I came on 4th Street, which is a beautiful ride. So thank you for that question, Jim, or that comment.
Okay. So
I have a question.
Tita Jocelyn. Okay, so let me share the screen. Jaime, is it let's see, this one? Okay, so Jocelyn is a commissioner for building safety, and Jaime is a commissioner on the planning for Central LA. So, we have folks that can help us shape how the city will transform. But Tita Jocelyn, go ahead.
Yeah, of course, my ideal would be to have that protected 2-lane, bike lane. In the organizations that you join, do you have an idea, like for LA, what percentage of the streets would you like to have, that infrastructure built?
I think every street, to be honest with you, and
100%?
every street, 100%. And I'm not talking in hyperbole either. On busy streets like Beverly or Melrose or whatever, you might have a separate bike path for bikes. There might be and so you wouldn't necessarily need one for Beverly and Melrose, but you might have a separate bike path for streets where cars go 40 miles an hour or faster. And then you might have a protected bike lane for streets like Temple, maybe where the cars are going a little bit slower. It's not quite as busy. And then you might have a neighborhood street where cars and bikes can coexist because cars are going slower because it's a neighborhood street.
Well, what part of the city is trying to advance that agenda? Do you know, is there a department in the city?
Yes, there's a couple, and that's actually one of the problems because there isn't one organization that does it all. There's of course Metro and DOT and street services. But where this kind of program has been successful is a place like Long Beach or Santa Monica or San Francisco. On Bike Talk, which I'm a producer and co-host on, we just had Charles Komanoff from New York talk about New York and how they're handling it. It takes a lot of political will, but we give over so much of our space to moving automobiles, but also parked car storage, that there's plenty of road on our streets. Fairfax Avenue, which is where I live in mid Wilshire area, is 9 lanes wide in some areas for cars. 9 lanes, parking lane, 3 lanes in each direction, north and south, and a center turn lane. I don't know how wide that is, but that's really wide. So there is space on our streets to claw back a little bit of room for people who don't have the luxury of driving or the privilege of driving, or the money to drive, or even just don't want to drive. So I think it's difficult because we have to maneuver the different city agencies to get all this done. Did that answer your question? I don't know that it did, but I think there's space there to accommodate people who choose alternate forms of transportation, because right now we are forcing people to drive a car.
Okay, so you're looking at 100%.
Well,
What timeline do you think can that be achieved? 10 years, 100 years?
I would say, the longer we wait, the more people will die. You can put it that way. The longer we wait, the more damage we'll do to our environment and our climate. The longer we wait, the more fractured our communities will be. It's not anything new to you all to know that, you know, the highway system was put in right through underserved neighborhoods, almost on purpose. And we can take some of that back. And I think it's time that we start doing that. So I can't give you 10 years, or I sure wish it was faster. And I think that's something that the fact that you all are here today and online, maybe we can speed the process up a little bit.
So
But let me ask one more thing. The more people that are seen on bikes, the more people will realize, oh, I can ride my bike. They're not wearing spandex. That's not Lance Armstrong. That's a young woman going to class. That's a young man going to the store. You know, that's an old man riding to.
You're not that.
You're right. Thank you.
This is old here.
No. So I'm sorry, James. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, so
But-
someone
but-
had a
But I only meant that the more people that are seeing biking, the more people will be comfortable with biking.
Someone asked, does the IRA have a fiscal help to buy an electric bicycle?
IRA,
IRS maybe, or
Maybe.
or the infrastructure, are you talking about the
Fawn, can you speak on that?
Infrastructure Act?
the government does.
Or Inflation Reduction Act?
Oh, great. You know, I don't know about that. I do know that certain communities have offered e-bike rebates, which is great because e-bikes are game changers. They are so much fun. And you don't sweat when you get someplace. You can wear whatever kind of clothing you want to. And I think I live about maybe 8 miles from here. And it would be on an e-bike, it would be like that. I could go another 8 miles and it wouldn't be any problem. So to answer his question, I'm not sure that the IRA, that the Inflation Reduction Act does have a buyback, but that's something that also we can fight for, that we can tell our state assembly members and state senators that we want some of that money to go toward e-bike buybacks, because e-bikes can be expensive, $4,000 or $5,000.
And I know, and I can attest to this from my uncle, I know there's been a lot of, a few members of the community who still, they still keep the bikes that they've been using, and they just added, a electric motor, into the pedals, and then, right below the frame, you could add,
Yeah.
where the battery could be stored.
I've seen that before. It's really great. But also some people keep their regular bikes and get an e-bike, and then they have a quiver of 2 different choices, you know, for what they need to do.
Okay, so, you know, this whole topic is about taking action. Oh, we have, before I will say what I wanted to say, Vicky, go ahead.
No, just real quick, I was just wondering if a person wanted to initiate getting a protected bike lane or even markings, who would they approach? Is it their council member, the Department of Transportation?
I would start with your council member. Are you CD 4 or 5? Do you know what you're in?
13.
Oh, 13.
13.
Is that Hugo Martinez?
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
he's very open to the idea, and I would talk to his office, talk to his field office, say where you want it, say, you know, why you want it. And I think he would be very open to it. He's been a real champion of getting people out of their cars and helping people who don't have cars. Not everybody in Los Angeles has a car. And so we need bicycle infrastructure so that those people can get to work, get to the store. So that's a great question. Thank you for that.
I just want to make a comment. In Asia, I remember visiting Hanoi. Everybody's on scooters. Also maybe in China, a lot of, but I think if those can all be electrified. My comment is, do you have a preference, or can you comment on bike versus e-bikes or electrified mopeds?
I think they're all great. I think whatever gets us out of a 5,000-pound steel vault, casket, is what's good for us. And I don't have an electric bike, but my wife is a little hesitant to bike. So I would get her an electric bike, and she and I would be able to then bike together. But we need the infrastructure first. And it's the same with the bike share programs. We need the infrastructure first, or the bike share programs aren't going to take off, because I have my own bike. I don't use the bike share program, but people who are novice bike riders who would use the bike share program may not bike because they don't feel safe. So I think, to answer your question, we have to take a step back and say, how can we get as much infrastructure as possible in place to make e-bikes really the choice for someone to buy rather than buying a car? Or your second car is an e-bike if it's a bigger family or something.
Okay, so one question from Fawn. Are rules of the road for bikes different than, for an e-bike is different than a traditional bicycle?
No, right now, e-bikes and bicycles follow the same laws. There's a cutoff for electric motorcycles where the motor is beyond a certain level. I don't know what that is, but it takes the bike to a higher speed. And then that e-bike is regulated by the same rules as motorcycles and cars. But right now, e-bikes and bikes are the same.
And then a follow-up is, can they be put on buses? Are they
Yes.
bulkier or
Yes.
heavier?
The e-bikes?
Yes,
That's a great question. Who asked that question?
Fawn.
That's a great question, Fawn. I don't know. I put my bike on the bus all the time. Again, I live in West Hollywood, and I go to the Valley a fair amount. And lucky for me, the 218 stops right near my house, and that goes over Laurel Canyon and drops me off at Ventura and Crescent Heights. And then I continue my ride from there. And so that's really great. I get to the bus stop and put the bike on. E-bikes are pretty heavy, and you'd have to lift them up and put them on the rack. Certain e-bikes, Van Moof is a company that's in Santa Monica that sells e-bikes, and they also sell used e-bikes, which is really great. And you can go out there and ride them. You can take it out for an hour or two, and which is really fun. A friend of mine and I did that and rode all around Santa Monica and the beach on the e-bikes. And those are a little lighter. The battery is in the frame, and so it would be easier to put up on that stand. But some e-bikes are pretty heavy, and I don't know whether, one, the rider would be able to lift it up and put it on the stand, or two, whether the bike rack on the bus could hold it. So that's a great question that I will find out, because I'm curious.
Okay. So really what we want to focus on is, how can we be part of this sustainable transformation revolution that's going on all over in different sectors in transportation, in a whole lot of different settings. So part of the challenge that I've been trying to deal with is water bottles, because Tita Jocelyn is very like, no plastic water bottles. And, you know, so, because it's convenient and it's cheap, so people buy them. And so recently I've noticed at work, people started bringing their own reusable water bottles.
And his coffee cup down there,
Yeah,
our coffee mug, what do you call that?
Water.
Oh, that's water. Oh, yeah.
and recently I saw an article from The Guardian that more and more people are starting to bring their own water bottle. It's a second, it's like bringing your keys heading out the door. It's like you don't think about it. It's part of your, you know, daily routine.
Reflex. It's
Right.
a reflex.
Yeah, and you know, the fix was not some high-tech solution, you know, to bring this new trend.
Right.
And the same way with bikes, you know, it's more of a combination of different I'm not sure which one is really the heaviest influence on changing behavior, but really it's a behavioral change, right?
Right.
So that's like, how do we change behavior? Is really like the question to move us, you know, to a more cleaner transportation. And
I just think that there's a program in LA, Ciclavia. So I think that's a good way of transitioning, of having people experience the, you know,
Open streets, right?
the thrill and being on a bike and the streets are closed and
They're closed to cars.
Right.
Close
Open to
start.
people.
Open to
open to people, that's what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
But maybe that's, you know, I don't know what effect Ciclavia has, because it's been, I think, in existence for now close to 10 years.
Yes, yeah.
And if we encourage people to attend that event, take their bikes, and, you know,
Yeah.
see that it's just the.
Well, Ciclavia has done such wonderful work. And again, I think we could push them to bring Ciclavia to your neighborhood.
Well, it used to go pretty close to our neighborhood,
Yeah,
but they're on a mission to bring Ciclavia citywide
right,
as much as possible.
right.
So we could only probably get once a year.
Well, my argument would be, you know, we should do it more often, once a month, like the last Sunday of every month.
Yeah.
And we should connect them so that you can get used to riding from here to downtown, from here to West Hollywood. And each Sunday, it'll just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And if the cars can't drive on that road on Sunday, people would get used to that also and say, gosh, maybe I'll do my errand on Sunday, on the final Sunday of the month on my bike.
Yeah.
There
It's
you
those
go.
church-going folk that don't like to have their interrupted parking.
Right, right.
availability.
Yeah, yeah.
so it definitely had an impact on awareness. You know, Ciclavia, you have this marketing campaign. You know, when you drive, you'll see that your road route has changed. And so, you know, that will lead to something, lead to something, lead to something until things change, like water bottles. And same as a lot of other things.
Well, smoking is the perfect example, right? I mean,
And there was a time when we all thought no one would ever separate their trash.
oh, God,
That's
totally.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
But here we are, and we're putting water, you know,
Cycle.
Plastic and
recycling
paper, right?
plastic in the right bin but years ago, there was push against answering machines. No one wants to talk to a machine. That's crazy. But you're, you know,
Yeah.
you use answering machines and not beepers
Right,
anymore. So
yeah.
we are able to change. We just have to figure out like showers to flowers, toilet to tap.
Right.
We gotta pick the right words to get the most amount of people.
I've never heard showers to flowers. I love that one. Yeah,
That
because toilet to tap is not
doesn't
great.
sound that. But when they changed the showers to flowers.
Yeah.
See,
Great.
that's a lot.
Water.
That's a lot more inviting.
Yeah.
For folks.
Yeah. Messaging.
Yes, exactly. Storytelling,
Storytelling.
which is Taylor, that's
That's my thing,
your
baby.
specialty,
Yeah.
storytelling. Before we continue with some of the questions here, how more personal, how did you become this environmental advocate and also have your career in Hollywood? So what's your story? What inspired you to?
I've always been a bike rider. I bought this bike here that I rode today. I don't know if you can see it. I bought that bike off a drug dealer in Aspen, Colorado in 1984. And he said to me, if you buy this bike and keep riding, you'll either keep doing drugs and not riding the bike, or quit doing drugs and riding the bike. I still have the bike, 34, almost 40 years, right? 84, 94, 04. Yeah. So that's a long time. So I've always been a bike rider. And very early on, when I started working in LA, I worked with Ed Bagley Jr. And he was at the time the big person who was riding to the set. So I said, I'm going to ride to the set. And I rode to the set one day when he and I were working together, and I got a flat tire. And I was a little bit late getting there, and I was like, oh, all freaked out. And Ed metaphorically put his arm around me and said, don't worry about it. I got a patch kit. I'll talk to the director. Everything's okay. You don't need to worry about anything. And that changed how I looked at getting around LA. And so ever since then, I've been riding my bike in LA. I still own a car, but I much prefer to ride a bike. And
But
so I
that's
did.
another reason to go to Ciclovia, get your free patch kit. Get your
Exactly.
free, tail light,
Yeah,
blinking tail light thing.
yeah,
They have a lot of these freebies that they give away at the events.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that just brings everybody in.
yeah.
There was this program they were running called Vision Zero.
Oh, sure.
But has anybody talked about it? Not too much since the new administration. So we got to keep
Yeah.
coming back to these politicians and saying, what about Vision Zero? Are we going to be reinventing the wheel, or are we going to go through with the road diet
Right.
that people didn't want because
Right.
the hate radio said, no way.
Yeah. Hate radio is exactly right. Yeah.
So
And I do think that that's the kind of thing that we can do. We can let your council person know that you want a bike lane, know that you support Vision Zero. And I think hopefully Karen Bass will be open to that. I think it has a lot to do with housing and homeless issues that we're dealing with, because if we can build housing that doesn't have parking, that housing can be a affordable. We don't need to build luxury housing.
All right, so Fawn has a comment. I just went to the Mid-Atlantic Climate Change Education Conference. The behavior change that is the most effective and has the best percentage is your regular social network, family and friends. In other words, a close network where you can influence directly by example.
Right.
And
That's a great comment. Start with low hanging fruit with your sister, your brother, your mother, your daughter.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true too. Like, I keep preaching to everybody, when you have family parties, please don't use paper plates or plastic utensils.
Yeah.
Zero waste.
Please
Yeah.
do it zero waste.
Yeah.
But that's, when you're family, you can tell them, we all have family parties all the time. July 4th is coming up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do your party, please.
Yeah.
bring your own water
Right.
Yeah.
on a reusable bottle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And eventually, it becomes a behavior. And another comment from Fawn, how do we become influencers by Tabitha Brown? Putting peer pressure to work by Robert Frank.
Oh, those are great. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really, the important part is how do we change society? And And this is one thing that we don't need to wait for big policies. You know, we can start now, you know, and eventually that the change will happen. And talk about change, what we started with was a patch of dirt in the parking lot 6 months ago.
Barren.
Barren, you know,
Barren.
like really dry, just nothing.
Compacted.
Yeah. And now, if you go to the Echo Park Library in our parking lot, it's beautiful. I filmed some bees as I came in here. Now there's pollinators. And so to take us to the next part of our event today, Vicky Perez, I'd like you to talk about our urban wildlife habitat demonstration garden, because I really want it to be something that could inspire people, that could educate people what sustainability really means and experience it for themselves. So Vicky, I will put you on the spotlight.
Sure, sure. And it really is the example of being the model of what people can do. And this is what we had envisioned from the beginning with us with this project. So we wanted to create this urban wildlife garden. We're calling it Wihihala, which is wild. What is it?
Wihihala. Wihihala. Wildlife Habitat LA.
The Wildlife Habitat LA. That's it. So this is a garden that would serve to feed wildlife, provide cover, water, places to raise their young, and utilizes sustainable practices. So we use plants that are native to our coastal sagebrush habitat. And we developed it as an example of what others can do in their own gardens and also learn about the plants and their uses. We'll have small plant descriptions later when the garden starts to grow in. But I just wanted to share with you what the plan was initially. I don't know if people saw it in the beginning. And actually, we wouldn't call it a dirt patch. It is still soil. Dirt is what you would sweep under the rug. Anything that is in the ground is soil. It's just compacted clay, abused, but it would still be soil. So this was what we had envisioned. It was our initial plan that we put into place. And I just wanted to quickly go through the plants and why we chose them. Let's see, where are we here? Nope, here we go. So the one of the first plants that we have there, and I hope it's in the garden because it was on the order list, is this Ceanothus. It's Ceanothus concha. This one is darker, but it says it's a concha. This particular plant provides nectar. It's heavy nectar and pollen. The seeds are eaten by birds and squirrels. It provides cover to raise young. And all of the plants in this garden as well, they have more traditional uses, which I won't go into, unless there's interest, but that'll be a whole other workshop. The second larger plant there is this Arbutus unato, which is, it's called the strawberry tree because it produces these red fruit that birds love, squirrels will eat. The whole bark is reddish, which is full of tannins, which have had historical uses. It's also to provide shade and for wildlife to raise their young. We have the bush sunflower, the coastal sunflower. It's one of the early blooming plants. It blooms in February. So it supports those early moths and butterflies and insects. It's also a heavy nectar producer, pollen producer. Seeds are also used, and every part of the plant is also used, can be used for other purposes. We have the white sage. This also is used by pollinators, and the seeds, the young shoots are eaten by some animals, rabbits. It's in the mint family. It's very aromatic, and people will be familiar with it for more of the spiritual uses when it's dried and burned in smudges. The seeds are also edible and ground into meals or flours. Let's see. We planted some narrow leaf milkweed, which I moved that towards the front of the garden because once it does get established in March and April, we're hoping monarchs will come. It's the primary food of monarchs. In fact, it's one of the but monarchs are pretty much the only butterflies that will lay its eggs and feed on this plant because of the toxin that this plant produces, a glycoside, which is absorbed by the butterfly and makes the butterfly poisonous to birds. You'll see in the stores the other types of milkweed that are very pretty, but they don't carry this glycoside that protects the butterflies. There's also another version of this one, which is the showy milkweed, but it's not native to this area. This plant goes dormant in November, so we wanted to put plantings around it that would fill in until it grows back in. So we planted yarrow. This is a low growing, also very aromatic plant that provides its heavy nectar producing. Let's see here. As well as the red buckwheat, which is also a heavy nectar pollen producer. In fact, you'll see buckwheat honey because it's so loved by bees. But these are smaller shrubs, smaller plants that will hopefully fill in those spaces around the yarrow. So we're hoping to put a water source in there soon. We're still working that out because of the mosquito concerns and also how to make it as maintenance free as possible. So that's our next project, is working out the water source as well as a drip system. We have right now, I thought it was a drip, but it turns out to be their sprinklers that they have set in there, but we'll be discussing that soon. So the next project is just making sure everything grows in. You'll see how tiny the plants are now if you go out. But we're hoping this will grow in and become a real learning experience and model for what others can do. So I don't know if Jaime wants to add anything, or Jocelyn, since you've been so very central to this.
Yeah, well, I guess I wanted to add that Laura has volunteered to check the garden at least once a week, or once a week, or twice a month. Oh, every
Oh,
Saturday,
fantastic.
Laura comes and does tutoring, right? Yeah. And so she'll go and check out the garden.
Could you post that? You put that on Instagram?
Yeah, but I can do that.
Vicky, are you gonna say, oh yeah, before and after photos?
I'll
Oh,
show,
I don't have the before and after photos available. Do you want me to look for them and I can find them?
I think
Those are good pictures.
I have pictures.
They're-
James.
Oh,
So
good.
James will, James,
And you had the picture of the before, the
Or
compacted soil patch.
Yeah, somewhere.
you have it
Oh,
somewhere.
that's
You'd have to have that.
Yeah,
But
I'm in Chicago right now. And so I haven't been able to actually go in and see all. Yes, that's the Arbutus unado. It's in the family of the madrone trees that are native.
Okay.
While James is looking for the initial, the before picture, I was
Mhm.
I was going to suggest, and I put it on the agenda for next meeting next month,
Mhm.
that maybe we could have a presentation at the there's a citywide library meeting. All of the friends groups meet in October at the
Mhm.
Central Library, the Mark Taper auditorium. And it would be great if we could be on you know, a speaker or center, sort of have a spot on the program
Yeah,
to present this project so that all the 70 libraries can adopt this as a project. Wouldn't it be great if the whole city then had this pollinator garden in each of the libraries?
Yeah, that's LA, and I think it was Fawn, or I'm not sure who said, take it nationwide. Let's start with LA first, and let's take this program nationwide after.
Love that vision though.
Yeah, the other libraries can help us take it nationwide, but you know, we'll have to get it in LA.
yeah, let's get it in the LA library system first and then take on the world.
And the reason why this is really important is, you know, learning from permaculture. They have a saying that, you know, you can observe nature and learn a lot. As we change our civilization to something that is more sustainable, something that doesn't cause a lot of harm and climate change, um, you know, nature can be a good teacher. And just within the garden itself, there's so many things to learn. You know, how good soil is created, you know, how we can feed ourselves, how we can, you know, deal with water, how we can deal with energy, with you know, plants and animals and insects, and the cycle of life from birth to death to decay to back to birth, you know. And so having a garden where people can actually go and look, observe, it will connect the dots for other folks, just as it has connected the dots for me. And that is really the purpose of it. Just like some of the farmers that have started to see the impacts of a more sustainable way of farming, of agriculture, that they've taken it upon themselves. They're not waiting for the government to change subsidy policies, but they're seeing that, hey, if you have healthy soil, if you don't destroy your soils, you have a bigger harvest and more resilient farm. And then, you know, as population reaches 9 billion in 25 years, maybe we'll be able to figure something out, you know, and all this wars and violence and climate catastrophes, maybe we'll be able to adapt. And some of the solutions may be as simple as riding a bike, you know, or putting a garden together. So, Jim, you have a question or a comment?
Yes. I've been studying.
Oh, we can't quite hear you.
How's that?
Better.
Okay. I've been studying regenerative agriculture for quite a while. And when you plant 8 or more plant species from 4 plant families, you create the conditions that in the soil, you get a tipping point and it leads to abundance. And so you really want to, when you're planting your gardens, you want to have a lot of different plants. 8 or more. The more you've got, the more you get. When you see a plant, the object that you're seeing, this is completely dependent on the context and the species and the growing conditions. But in general, the plant that you see is 25% of the carbon that the plant took out of the atmosphere. The other 75% is pumped into the soil in liquid sugar. That's, that's new information, right? That's new stuff. And so, and feeding that life in the soil, all those different flavors of plants, because it's a different kind of sugar for each plant. That's what creates the conditions where you get this abundance, this tipping point. And one other thing I have to go, but one other thing I'm going to leave y'all with is a new word I've learned recently is negentropy, NEGENTROPY. And that is the opposite or inverse of entropy. Now, we've been taught our whole life that everything is coming apart. The second law of thermodynamics is that everything is going to disorder. In biology, in nature tends to complexity. When you plant a seed, in a little while, it gathers and creates a whole plant, and that plant drops seeds and you get more and more and more. Nature tends to complexity. Nature tends to abundance. And there's a completely different perspective to look at things, that negentropy instead of entropy. We are moving in a place of abundance. We can recreate Eden by planting more plants. And that's the whole.
And to add to that, Jim, capture carbon from the atmosphere and reverse climate change.
We reutilize that. Yeah, climate change has got really very little to do with our carbon use. It's everything to do with it, but it's more to do with our land use practices. It's our land use practices that create the conditions that make the planet warm up. It's a completely different perspective than worrying about the amount of carbon we're using.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go right back to the bicycle here too. The bicycle gets the caloric equivalent of 1,000 miles of a gallon.
I like that.
Right. That means that
I'm
if you
gonna get
ride,
a donut on the way home.
if you ride your bicycle 30 miles a day in 1 month, your food requirement is the same as the energy found in 1 gallon of gasoline. And that's a way of looking at the metric of that. When you get in your car and you step on the gas and you burn that gallon of gas, you've just used the energy that's necessary for you to live for an entire month in an energetic manner. And that's a perspective that that's, it's the same perspective when you flip the switch on the light switch too. It's really hard to find that metric though. But a bicycle, 1 gallon of gasoline is the same amount of energy that it takes to keep you alive for an entire month. Wow.
Those are
And then your car, 95% of the time your car exists, it takes up the space and prevents something else from happening. It's not doing nothing. All your parked cars are taking up space and preventing something else from going on.
Could be a garden, right?
Right.
The guy that figured out the square foot garden, yeah. You put a garden that's 4 feet by 4 feet between your front door and the curb. And every day when you walk in and out of the house, you tend your garden, you visit it for just a couple of minutes, and it grows all the vegetable matter you need for the entire year.
While we're on the bike, can I say something really quick?
go ahead.
I'm a producer and co-host of Bike Talk, and tomorrow we are doing a panel discussion at Eco Village. Do you all know Eco Village?
Of course.
Yeah, and it's starting at 11 o'clock We're gonna have John Yee from Walks LA. We're gonna have Eli Coffin from Bike LA. Josh Cohen, an attorney, Adonia, blanking on her last name, who helped found Ciclavia. And we're gonna have a panel at Eco Village from 11 to 12 about where the bicycle movement in Los Angeles started, where is it now, and where is it headed. And what James was saying made me think of all that stuff that I didn't mention that, but of course, everyone's welcome to come and be a part of it and give a comment or ask a question.
Thank you for sharing that, Taylor. Now, I'd like to connect it to, another reason why we're putting all this effort to educate, to build an infrastructure. And it's really for the next generation, our youth, our stewards, to take on this challenge and help us transform our world. And Richard, one of our stewards, I'd like to give the floor to you to talk about what your thoughts are in this whole journey since we started 6 months ago to what's next and for you, for your career, for our society, for our planet in general. So, we really need the youth to be part of this process. The faster they come on board, you have someone like Greta Thunberg, as young as her, to someone like Richard. We can do this, and there is hope, but we have to take action now. And so, Richard, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much for your presentation. I did biking as more as a family hobby here and there. And even in college, I used a bike to travel from classes to classes. And so just a little bit of background of what I'm doing in terms of being an environmental stewardship was my project was to educate about how using turning any food waste we generate at home, food scraps, vegetable scraps, and everything, and getting people to really get into the idea of turning them into compost. Thank you, and trying to get as much compost bins in the house, and as much homes starting up in LA and hopefully in the United States, because I know Canada, being there, almost every single household I've been to has or have been using compost bins. And what I've been noticing since I started this stewardship program till now, we already had the resources to promote doing composting, giving out bins via LA Environment.
Oh, wow. I love
Yes.
that.
And whenever I tell people about that, a lot of them, yeah, exactly. A lot of people were told about this, they didn't know that this resource was available. And even Teacher Jocelyn mentioned to me that LA has been advocating that if you have any compost, they're now you're able to put them in green bins. So you have no places to dispose of it. And what I yes, and the one thing I learned this past 6 months is the lack of advocacy in situations like this. In biking, I know a lot of people we want to get as much people educated about them, and I think for me one of the best ways is to advocate them in person by showing them, hey, I've been biking from LA for this many years. It is safe, and I want to share it to you so that you learn how all the positive about this, and then you can share it to other people, and it'll be a domino effect.
Right.
And that's exactly what I've been doing with the compost bins. Starting locally first with my family members. My mom was actually one who inspired me. Her and I inspired my grandparents to pick up their own compost bins. And like I said, it's a domino effect. she's been telling her friends, her sisters, and now even our church members have been slowly picking it up.
Right.
And I want this to expand not just in LA, but as much homes possible. Ideally, in the larger scale, the entirety of the United States,
Yeah.
because as someone who worked in, right now I'm working with LA County sanitation districts, I've seen a lot of food go down to waste. There's a materials recycling facility in Point Hills, and all I see are just food trucks worth of vegetables, worth of fruits just being shredded, and all the liquids were going down to storm drains, and luckily enough, at least some of those foods are being used. The business food scraps are being converted into fertilizers. But there's only a small amount of LA doing that. Imagine how much instead of going to the landfills, how much of the foods from the households can be used to, fertilize the garden we have in
Yeah, your own garden, right?
exactly. So yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Richard.
Thing.
Where did you get that compost bin?
There are millions of this, the city is
Sitting around.
distributing to households.
Oh, really?
So you can just call and ask.
Yeah, okay,
It's a real cute
Yeah, it's great.
design.
yeah.
You can have it. That's your, our gift to you.
You can install it on your bike.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely take it because I'm a
Look,
big
it's got
composter.
weird ways of, like.
Oh, like right here, yeah.
Yeah, there are
And on the
different
bottom.
options of how you can mount it.
And it's so funny because the thing I use doesn't have a little,
Attach.
so,
Yeah,
it-
but if you look at it closely, there's teeny little micro holes
oh,
all over, so that.
I did, right, I can see. Yeah. I can have it?
Yes,
Uh,
and you have. a
It's my
green bin.
swag.
It's your swag. Can it fit on your rack? I'm sure. it can.
Yeah, that's no problem.
It can fit underneath.
Yeah, I have a little clip there and everything. I take tons of stuff on that.
And you have a green bin, I'm sure, if you live in.
Yeah, I do.
The
I
city.
have a big compost bin that I got from the city.
That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
toss it there,
Yeah.
once a day.
I was
or-
doing it this morning.
Oh, cool.
All right, and then before we close out this program, this series, Laura, one of our volunteers and one of our newest board members for the Friends of the Cal Park Library. She is in the educational sector. And Laura, why don't you share a little bit of what your thoughts and plans, initiatives are?
Okay, my name is Laura. I'm just a tutor here, but I heard about this through my school and I just wanted to do like volunteer hours. So anything that you guys need me for, I'm there. And for your presentation, it makes me want to like ride to work now.
Yeah.
So it's like
Good.
a good thing. And my dad loves riding his bike. He has his car, he has everything, but it's just like, he always says like riding is just so different. Like it's fast and he loves the view when he goes downtown. I'm just like, oh my dad, like I worry about him sometimes, but then he's like, don't worry, I'll be fine. So it makes me like kind of want to go when I see him and be like, thank you for like doing that because you're saving a lot of like on gas and things like that. So that's my plan. Hopefully when I go back to work, to start like just writing it.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that because I think you can. It's not difficult. It takes a little
Yeah.
push, but I think once you realize you can do it, it changes everything.
Yeah.
You realize, well, if I can ride to work, I could also ride to Trader Joe's. I could also ride to my friend's house. I could also ride to class. I can ride everywhere. And then the city's
You
your.
might
your
have to take
oyster.
an Uber if you go to Trader Joe's.
Okay.
Right. Although, I find that I go to Trader Joe's much more often. And so I'm constantly buying fresh
Yeah.
and it's changed a little bit. One of the things that I had in my program that I don't mean to take away, I'm so sorry. But it was how much I hate Costco and those places. I can't stand them,
Oh.
so.
Yeah.
Process.
Well,
Yeah.
it's corporate.
But thank you for your presentation. Like, I'll definitely do what I can for like, for school and for work, just spreading the word. And I do have coworkers who do, take their bikes, and I admire them for that, you know, so I'm gonna try to get on that and just like spread the word.
Great, great. Well, thank you for everything that you're doing here.
Yeah, and we hope we can put together a small program for Laura where people can bring their ideas and, increase more of that influence. Especially the young people, just innovate new ideas.
I think of you as a young person, James.
What was that?
I said, I think of you as a young person.
Me?
Yeah.
You are.
You're
Yeah.
still young.
You are, Blanche, you are.
Millennial.
Oh, I guess.
You're blushing a little.
Yeah, and so, as we close this phase in this project, we look forward to what's next. I know there's a lot that we can do. We have resources, we have this space, we have some budget, we have the neighborhood councils, we have the Rotary Club, we have Taylor. We have our LA council members. So all 6 parts of the series were recorded and it's available. We put the link on the chat.
Yeah.
Or they can go to cbbc.club. That's for the Carlos Bulletin Book Club. That's another aspect of the Friends group on a more of the cultural aspect. But we put the content there and you can visit and share, and this will live on and hopefully inspire others. There's a comment here. Since this is the final meeting, I would like to share that one of my chosen ways to make a difference is to use only sustainable toilet tissue. No more cutting trees for this purpose. Yes, I'm glad, our efforts are making a difference in one way or another. And so this is not the end. This is a start. We have the garden now, and we have a working model with a very small amount of resource. We can, with synergy, we can make it something that it can really make an impact. And to close out the program, I'd like to give it back to Taylor for any, words of advice, words of inspiration, and whatever you feel like sharing to the audience and the rest of the world.
Wow. Well, thank you again for doing the program, James, and for inviting me. I would love to come back and teach some cycling classes to the neighborhood, and maybe we could do that here in the space to get people comfortable on a bike for the first time or back on the bike. And really the only inspiration that I can offer is what I said at the end of my little presentation, that the world is better for everybody when more people ride bikes. And that's just full stop. That's the truth. So thanks for giving me a platform to speak, and thanks for all the work that you all are doing.
All right. All right. Bye, everyone.